All right, Grand Rising. Today is June the 2nd, and I'm just gonna talk briefly about the admiralty process. There's one more process after this, in this series of covering like an overview of all the stuff that we would discuss and work on in this group. So far we've done the taxes and we've done secure creditor. Um, we talked about estate last week. We're going to talk about admiralty now. And then the last one to talk about is going to be the Roman Christian citizenship. And you kind of, these three all go together. The estate, the Roman citizenship, and the admiralty are kind of, they're all different, covering different parts of the same sort of general process. And I'm going to start by talking about that. Well, first, let me list off the documents. I have this actually like written up exactly. The documents that go with the admiralty process. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's 11 documents, but the documents are very, very, very similar to the estate documents. So really, that's why I say do the estate process before this process because the documents look similar and they kind of handle a similar area. The estate handles your physical remains that are on the land. The admiralty handles your physical remains that are on the sea. So one of the things that they do in this process is they're constantly flipping back and forth between maritime law and land law and statutes. And you really never know what exactly they're talking about. They really done a mess, really honestly, of convoluting this whole thing so you can never quite figure out what angle they're coming from. So as I'm talking about this stuff, it's actually helping me to figure out how to frame it because why anybody would do all this work is beyond my understanding, except for if you don't do it, they can come at you from some direction. You can't leave any doors open. And if you don't kind of handle all of the problems, you leave doors open for them to come at you. So this admiralty process really handles anytime they try to put you under maritime law. Now, I have a couple books that I found on maritime law, in whaling specifically, and there's a video, I'll put it in the group, where Patrick Devine is talking about the whaling and admiralty and stuff like that, and it gives a pretty good overview. And I have a article that I found about it that's not too long. I think it's 4 or 5 pages. And then when I went to look for the other articles related to whaling and admiralty law that this particular individual had written, I couldn't find them. They pulled them. And so that's always helpful when you're trying to find something and they pulled it. But basically, it's really just one of those things where um, once you get a general understanding, you're probably not gonna. These are not things that you would encounter on an everyday process. But the fact that you can speak about them really helps when you're trying to figure out how to operate in the public because all of these different processes are giving you different ways, different hats to wear in the public. So right now, the government they have all the hats. They can come at you from whatever direction they want to come at you from. And you see that as they're trying to remove the illegals from this country, they're literally coming at people from all different directions, stuff they weren't even prepared for. They can't address. This is what they do. Right now they're not doing it to us, so this is preparation in case they do decide we're going to turn on the citizenry. Um, they could turn on everybody else, but they certainly won't be able to turn on me because I will claim the highest position I can actually claim the highest position in the room wherever I go. As soon as I figure out what room I'm going into, then I can claim the highest position. And knowing how these documents work and how this language works gives you the ability to claim the highest position. Because the Roman citizenship, like we'll talk about next week, that has to do with canon law. So if you are in an ecclesiastical setting, then sometimes they actually call these courts under ecclesiastical courts. This I've seen so much crazy stuff like doing this research. Like when they want to get somebody, they will call them under whatever court they think they can have the highest jurisdiction. So by handling all these sets of documents, you will always have the highest jurisdiction in the room. And there's nothing that they can do about it. And it's not like it's not stuff that you need all the time, but it's definitely useful to understand how the processes work. So the documents that are part of the admiralty process are it's called the actual notice of action. Then there's an admiralty alien life estate deed. Now you do a deed as well with the estate process, but this is an alien life estate deed, which is different from the deed that you do with the estate process. Then you have an admiralty christening vessel. This is where it ties into the Roman citizenship because in order to do that particular document, the christening vessel, you have to have a baptismal certificate. So that's where the tribe comes in. We do baptismal certificates, because you need that as a part of all of these processes to cover all the exits. There's also a B2 form. The B2 form is one that you use when you're dealing with the bankruptcy courts. Now, I did have some interaction with the bankruptcy courts, but it wasn't like they actually followed the notices. So I just, that's just something else to throw out there, I guess. There's a U.S. Treasury bailment form. There's a Marshal's bailment letter. Actually, these are letters that you fax in. Then there's a Federal Maritime Commission Office of the Vessel Master form that you say that you're going to take on. Um, then you have a letter to the Marshal Bailies accepting the Master Office. Then there's a letter that goes to the State Attorney General, the vessel master notice, putting them on notice that you're vessel master. Then you have a state termination of trade agreements. Then you have the Bureau of Fiscal Service Admiralty letter of credits release. Now there's a credits release letter that goes with the estate, but these are not the same credits. When I say they have literally farmed us out like cattle, like 100 different ways. That's not even being facetious. Like any possible way they could take a living vessel and carve out a piece and put a number on it and basically buy, sell, and trade against that number, they have done. This when I just started researching the admiralty process, just trying to get an understanding of it, I was horrified because basically they consider you a whale. So let me talk about the document that I put in the group. So this document is the flow chart. So it explains to you kind of how this thing works, the incorrect way and then the correct way. So it says defending the admiralty of America as you are the admiralty of the land. But you are an American whale, a mammal of the commercial seas, to be harvested for the foreign commercial whaling vessel owners' benefit and profit. Below you will find the three modern Babylonian maritime whaling vessels used to harvest your labors and to feed on your fears. You are the admiralty owner of your American cargo under your perfected admiralty title and lien. That's one of the documents that I put on the list. That was taken for hire and bailment under the false pretense of charters of demise. This action is based upon documentary evidence of the fraud and is also covered in USC Title 46 shipping code. So when Patrick was putting this together, he went into the shipping codes under Title 46 and really, really did a deep dive into how they treat shipping vessels versus how they treat um uh um like estate, like land. Land and shipping is totally different. So for example, think about it like this. When those people came over here to colonize this land, people were already here. So there's no way that somebody over in Britain could just give them a title to the land. So that's not what they did. They gave them a title to wherever their ship landed. And by virtue of them landing their ship at a particular location, they gave them the title that way, not giving them the direct title to the land. They don't hold the title to the land. They hold the title to where the boat landed. The, anyway, that's just a whole nother. This stuff is like mind blowing. Okay, so on the first line, it has the first maritime foreign commercial whaling vessel under a false pretense charter of demise, i.e., the certificate of live birth. Because remember, a certificate of live birth is a death certificate. A birth certificate is a birth certificate. A certificate of live birth is a death certificate. So in the first box, it says owner of the vessel. That's the 1871 foreign copyrighted United States. They hired the vessel. Okay. When they hired the vessel, there was a vessel bar master. That's the federal district court. And the okay, it looks like it just kicked me out of the chat. That's crazy. Um, good thing I'm looking at it this week. I'll keep going. So, the first mate is the state of. So we talked about this before, where you have like Florida State, that's one entity, and you have the state of Florida, that's a totally separate entity from Florida State. So the first mate of this, you know, charter of demise is the state of um, and it's called the vessel purser. Okay, then post obit, which is after you turn 21, all of these numbered seamen are false pretenses. The first seaman is the numbered bastardy falsehood created by the vessel owner, and then additional seamen created by false pretense, number certificates and license. So that's all your numbers, all the numbers that assigned to you, any certificates, all that stuff. All of that stuff is basically under false pretenses under maritime. Now we've already discussed how these are false pretenses under the beneficial owner. That's one way that they're under false pretenses. So all those same numbers are also established under false pretenses under Admiralty too. Under the state, under Admiralty, under Roman citizenship, they put them all. So imagine how many numbers you have assigned to you that have all been established under false pretenses. This is like going on forever. This is infinity. The way that this thing goes. So they, as long, that's why they always want you opening new accounts and you know, signing up for new stuff, refinancing your home, court cases, all that stuff. Those are all new numbers that they not only use under the beneficial owner, they use it under a state, they put it here under Admiralty, they use it again under Roman citizenship with the whole church stuff. They use these numbers over and over again. It is outrageous. Some of the most outrageous stuff I have ever seen in my life is the fact that they take these numbers and put them under all these different categories. That's the first maritime commercial whaling vessel. Then they have another second maritime commercial whaling vessel. And it says the first and second commercial whaling vessels are joined in a contract of mateship and act as the two vessel bar masters. So they act as the ones that are in charge of the actual vessels. So you know how they always say that, oh, you're a slave, you're this and that. Actually, you're the master, but they don't tell you you're the master. They never tell you you're the master. So again, we saw under the beneficial owner paperwork, you're the master. Under the estate paperwork, you're the master. Here again, under the Admiralty, you're the master. But in public, they tell you you're the slave. That is actually crazy. Like, these people have gone to extreme lengths to like convince people that this stuff is true. Like it's really hard to wrap your mind around. So I'm gonna go through the second row. So it's the second maritime foreign commercial whaling vessel under a false pretense charter of demise, the certificate of baptism. So these are people, most people have been baptized. They usually baptize you as a child, right? But it depends on what church you were baptized in. So most people, we go to a regular church, you were baptized under false pretenses under the Church of Rome. Now, I'm Orthodox, so we're not under the Church of Rome. We're my church actually is under um it's an offshoot of the Russian Orthodox Church. So I I solved that problem by getting out, by getting baptized into a different group and out of the whole Roman thing. But that's what we do with the tribe. So because the tribe has a religious arm, the Saint Philomena lay church, we baptize people under that seal. And I do have a seal and all for that because when I saw how serious this was, like you don't want to be playing games with these people. So we have a seal for that. We baptize people under the seal of our church. And the reason why I'm gonna talk about this more when I talk about the Roman citizenship, but the whole purpose of baptism is to forgive you of all your sins. If you've been baptized, you've been forgiven. Because what does the Lord's Prayer say? It says, forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. So technically, just based on canon law, your debts have been forgiven. And see, they want to ignore all of that. That's why you got to go to that church and pastor say you got to make sure you pay your bills. He always talking about that because they don't want you to know that when you were baptized, your debts, all your debts, past, present, and future, were forgiven. That's the whole point of Jesus dying on the cross. Whether you believe he was a real person or not, the point is to forgive your debts. So if my debt's supposed to go to Jesus, why are you trying to say I owe this bill? That's under the Roman citizenship. That's a whole separate thing. But that is also tied into this part because if you've ever received a certificate of baptism, it's just like a certificate of live birth. It should be a baptism certificate. Mine says baptism certificate. I do believe. It shouldn't say certificate of baptism. That doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I'll just go through this line too. So you have the owner of the vessel, which is the Church of Rome, the hirer. So basically, when they build these churches under the Church of Rome, actually, it's not really, it's that he's calling it the Church of Rome, but now from my own research, I understand it's the Greek churches under these Greek gods that have enlisted this process. Um, they're the ones who hire these churches to go out and what did Jesus gave the Great Commission to spread the word all over the earth. That was the Great Commission. But what they did as a part of the Great Commission is they put on these different they're called dumb diverses, these edicts from the church. Dumb diverses is just one, but they have a bunch of them. They put these edicts on the church and told the church, hey, you need to go out, evangelize everybody, baptize everybody, or kill them. Like, even if they say that they're a Christian, if they're not this kind of Christian, a Roman or Greek Christian, you still need to kill them because they have to be a Greek Christian in order to be a real Christian. This is why Orthodoxy is like literally persecuted all over the earth. Ukraine, the whole Ukraine Russia war has to do with Orthodoxy. That's because Zelensky was bombing all the Ukrainian Orthodox churches. He didn't, because they didn't support him because of his lifestyle. And literally, he's all those places that wanted to join with Russia are Orthodox places because one thing Putin does know, if he's not stupid, is he's protecting the Orthodox Church, just like he protected all those Russian icons where all the people are black in them. It's the same kind of deal. And so that whole Ukraine Russia war is about orthodoxy and destroying any competition to the Greek Orthodox, the Greek Christian church, which is weird because you have a Greek Orthodox church, which is, I don't know. I don't even want to get into it. So, anyway, so that's the first part on that. Then you have the vessel barmaster, and that's the diocese court. I don't even know if people understand that there's not only is there a diocese court, there's actually supposed to be ecclesiastical courts that hold business and hear hearings. Um, there's ecclesiastical lawyers that argue canon law. Like, it's just a huge field that, like, only if you are part of the Greek Christian church in Rome that you would even know about. But it's not even, anyway. All right, so you have the diocese court under a contract of mateship with the federal district courts with the U.S. Marshals as bailiffs. So these diocese courts work in tandem with the federal district courts. This is why when you go into the court, you don't know what court you have no idea which court they're calling into session. And you have to ask, are you calling this court? Are you calling that court? Are you calling this? Like, you have to, if you don't know any of this stuff, there's no way for you to actually, this, of course, like I always say, this is not the first way you interact with these courts. But if you don't know that they have all of these different courts they can call into session, you can call a court into session. They can say, session, say, yeah, I call the Admiralty court into session. That changes the whole thing. That's on public record. Everything, these people start to move and wiggle around. Like I said, Patrick Devine is the one who talks about this and in detail. So you have this vessel bar master that's working in conjunction with the chief master mate, which is your corporate sole person, the hiring and bailer. So again, they have you, your corporate sole person, as the bailer, as the person who takes the instructions, while they're the bailee, the person who gives instructions. Then, without willful desertion with a mutinous force, again, the first mate, religious corporate person, or spouse is called the vessel purser. That's the one who keeps the cash. So basically, this how they separate you from all these different accounts that you have under Admiralty. They have this vessel purser, this religious corporate person or spouse, because a purser is like a they deal with the money, they deal with the purse, right? So they keep you separated from your actual money because the money all circulates through what that corporate person. So you have an actual account. Anyway, Patrick went into all that. I just, stuff I don't feel like it was necessary all the way to the extreme like he did, and actually trying to get them to send you money and all of that. Look, let them drown under their own weight is my opinion. So the last stage is post obit, which is after 12 years old. So the first one was 21 years old. This one is after 12 years old because most of the time when you're baptized as a child, like a little baby. So he really had this in the wrong order. This one should be first, and then the first one should be second. But then you have the first seaman, who is the religious bastardy falsehood created by the vessel owner. And then you have any additional seamen created by false pretense, number certificates and licenses. So any certificates, licenses, whatever issued to you by the church, let's say if you're a pastor, preacher, you get marriage certificate from the church because you get a marriage certificate from the state. But then when you get married in the church, you also get another marriage certificate. Like, this is the kind of stuff that the games that they play over and over. So you're wondering, how can these big churches stay open, like these big cathedrals, if they're Roman Catholic or Greek Catholic, the way that I call them? They have all these accounts. They're managing these accounts of people, who have been dead, and they're still managing their accounts, right? So the last set is if you were in military service. Now, this don't apply to me because I wasn't in the military, but it's still the same sort of thing. The first two apply to everybody. The third one, only if you were in the military. So the owner of the military vessel, U.S. Department of Defense, is the hirer. The vessel bar master is the federal district court judge with the U.S. Marshals as the bailee. The chief master's mate is your corporate soul, the hiring and bailer. Again, you have the willful desertion by mutinous whore. That's the first mate. That's a state of corporate person, or spouse. That's a vessel purser, which would be the state that you were born in, I guess. And in the post obit, this is also after 25 years of age. You have the first seaman the numbered bastardy falsehood created by the vessel owner, and you have additional semen created by false pretense, number certificates and licenses. So any military number, your station, duty, discharge, all those numbers were all created under these same false pretenses. And so the way he has this document set up is, if you once you understand how this cycle flows, you are qualified to be the master. So it says here the vessel bar masters have surrendered their masterships. Meaning, when you try to do this, is why you have to do some of this paperwork for you can't just start with this. Like the whole point is going through the beneficial, the secure creditor, and then a beneficial owner, and then the estate is to try to get them to handle these accounts. You're begging them, hey, I have these accounts. I know it's your responsibility. I need you to handle these accounts because I know that I'm not supposed to. Because on here, it has you as the bailer, not the hirer. The hirer is the one who's responsible for the bill. You're not the hirer. You didn't hire yourself. Did you cause yourself to be born? No. So you did not hire yourself. A creator, the creator called you into this planet. Therefore, the creator is responsible for you. Now, the copyright of the United States, the Church of Rome, Department of Defense, they all decided to take the position of the creator. That's fine, but they also have to pay bills that the creator owes. So either they need to pay the bills that the creator owes, or they need to relinquish the title of the creator, because that's what they're doing. We're not supposed to be paying for none of this stuff, and they know it. But as long as they want to pretend to be God, they're responsible for it. That's all this paperwork is setting it up to say that same thing. As long as y'all want to pretend to be God, because you, for some reason, think you're supposed to be God, you got to pay God's bills. And until you have the money to pay God's bills, you ought to stop saying that you're Him. And they won't. They just won't give it up. They just won't give it up. So, therefore, as the chief master's mate, and you put your name there, I'm assuming the title of the office, master of the vessels. Now, master is not hirer. It's not. And this is where understanding this terminology is going to be important. Like, you're going to have to really understand the difference between all of this stuff in this. This is like, this is so fringe and niche that it's not very often that you would even have to use this. But I know one thing: if somebody ever called me in the court, I would know what to say, because I would be like, I need to be in the admiralty court. I'm an admiralty judge. I would have all my paperwork. I'm an admiralty judge, so therefore I need to be in admiralty court. That stops the whole. They can't. What are they going to do with that? They can, shuck and jive all they want, but I can call in the actual marshals on them. That's a whole nother thing. I think Patrick Devine, again, God bless his soul, I think he went a little too far. But he's right. If you are an admiralty judge, you have the same option to you as other admiralty judges. You can call the marshals in on these people for pretending to be in admiralty court when they're lying about it. And that might work for you more now so than in the past, based on all the other political stuff. So I'm assuming the title of office, master of the vessels, and ordering bailees to process my orders over the bailment cargo. Now, what's the bailment cargo? This is really interesting. All of those numbers, that's the first seaman, the additional seaman created, all of those numbers is all your cargo. So here you are, if you're a spiritual person, you think, oh, I'm doing all this work, getting rid of my shadow, all of this stuff. If you haven't touched this paperwork, you have no idea how much baggage you're carrying. This is the baggage. Like, this can correlate it to the scripture, like, so precisely. Like, it's not, I'm not going to go into it, but this is the baggage that you're carrying, and you don't even know it. They assigned it to you. You didn't ask for, again, you didn't ask to come into this realm like this. The creator sent you here to do something, and he said he was going to provide all of your needs. And so that's how it's supposed to be happening. And they literally put all this baggage on you. You're not supposed to have all these numbers assigned to you. That's not how it's supposed to work. You can't be numbered. It says Ezekiel saw the number that, or John saw the number that no man can number. Like, no man can, even if you're one person, it's still a number that no man can number. You can't put a number on a human living person. And that's, where they got into all of this, mess as it is. So I will be terminating my false documented hiring at will because my hiring was to destroy my freedoms and right of American Admiralty by the foreign commercial whaling. Therefore, as the master of the vessels, I am declaring that the vessels can no longer operate because of the false pretense. Crew members have been terminated. All the vessel cargo and wages is to be offloaded, and the bailies are ordered to return it to the lawful admiralty owner within 3 commercial days' time. So there's money that's floating around with all of this stuff, and people are like, "Where's the money?" It's money floating around with all this stuff. They're just not gonna give it up. Like they are making this as hard as and difficult as possible. And being that we don't know exactly how things are going to go, it's better to have this stuff already on file. They can't ignore it because they've already received certified copies of it and all of that stuff, than to be scrambling when America starts to fall apart, the commercial America starts to fall apart, and you trying to figure out how you want to preserve your interests where you got a home, but you don't even have the title. You don't even have the deed because it's all electronic. They did a bunch of stuff that was never supposed to do. Everything was supposed to be on paper, and they put everything into electronic system, and they churn it and churn it through the system. They don't even have titles for most of the houses. The MRIS is a total scam. And when people start to figure out that, they don't have, what'll happen is as people start to buy houses in cash and get out of the MRIS system only works because people buy stuff on credit, and that's inside their system. But when you start buying houses and property and stuff in cash, and you demand the title right then and there, that's when it's going to become tricky because they're going to have to issue you a real title, and it'll pull it out of that MRIS system, and that system is just going to completely crash because they're going to be looking for titles. They can't find them. They can't do the transfer. Right now, a lot of the whole mortgage industry basically is just complete and total fraud. They don't have any of the documents to transfer the property. They don't have them. They just literally don't have them, and they're illegally transferring property. So that's just neither here nor there. It's just one of the things. So I'm going to talk about one more thing. In the Admiralty, there's something called the trade name transfer and release, and that I talked about towards the bottom. So I'm going to read some of this document and kind of explain it. So the first party, so if you've done any of the other processes, you know that there's always 2 different parties. Even in a commercial security agreement, there's 2 different parties. This is similar. Now, when you get to Admiralty, you definitely use, if you have a tribal name, your tribal name versus your quote unquote legal name or birth certificate name. This is when you really would be separating these 2 entities when it gets to estate and also when it gets to Admiralty. And especially once you do the Roman citizenship, because one thing about God, whenever he brought somebody in, he gave them a new name, like Abram went from Abram to Abraham, from Sarai to Sarah. So you're constantly getting a new name with the Creator. That's how he operates. And this is kind of like the same thing. So the first party is the Maritime Trade Name Corporation, first, middle, and last, as a bastardy created issue to be used for pawning collateral operations as heritable bonds and securities against my inheritable United States Treasury devised assets by the foreign public state and church bankrupt corporations. As a maritime, commercial, mercantile, copyrightable trading corporation of heritable ponds, it is also set up a trade name bankrupt estate as a maritime depository. So basically, all of that is saying your legal name was set up as a estate, but it was already bankrupt when they set it up. See, because just like I said, there's money in all of these. They stole all the money. So there's no money. This always goes back to being no money. No, they assigned money to all of these different things, and then they stole it because we're dealing with pirates here. And so even though there's numbers like dollar amounts that are assigned to these things, the companies that stole them are bankrupt, and also you're bankrupt. That's why you deal with bankruptcy court with admiralty, because it has to deal with all of this comes down to bankruptcy. Now, some people they file the whole bankruptcy and all of that stuff, but again, if you don't have, like, I don't have any assets, so it's not going to do me any good to file bankruptcy. I don't see a need for it. Let me just put it that way. I won't say it wouldn't do me any good. It might, but I don't see a need for it because I don't have any assets. But if I had a bunch of assets, I would be going through this process and filing bankruptcy and pulling my assets off of their particular system. But when you know that this is how the system works, you can avoid this from the beginning and you don't have as many of these different issues. But then, of course, this comes up sometimes where you have other kind of issues. This is why you have all of these tools in your tool belt in case you have to address a really they come at you with some kind of weird issue. You have multiple ways of handling a situation and slowing them down from railroading you, because that's basically what they do. All right, and the second party, under a newly adopted United States Admiralty trade name, that would be my tribal name, for an American private enterprise estate as a manual barter trading enterprise. So basically, I'm operating under barter. Like, I'm not operating under any of these contracts. These whatever, because one of the documents is terminating of all the trade agreements. So you may have people who's supposed to do this and that, and you sold them out for this and that. You can't put me under that contract because I'm opting out of that. I terminated that contract. And therefore, you might want to just let me go about my business because I don't have no business with the state of whatever or the state of whoever at all. Now, I might have business with like Florida State, but I don't have any business with the state of Florida. Even if I have an ID, even if I have a passport, that doesn't mean I have business with them. That's bartering. I have an ID that I paid for. They told me it was $20. That was a barter. In exchange for $20, they gave me an ID. That's a barter. That's not necessarily a contract, especially when you sign it VC, which says under duress. That's not a contract. That's a barter. And so you have to be able to explain it because they're only trained to think in one way. You have to be able to think from multiple ways. So same thing with my passport. That was a barter. They told me it was gonna cost $200 for my passport. I paid the $200. We bartered. There's nothing wrong with bartering. The problem is when they put you under these contracts and assign these numbers to you and you never can get control over them. This is how you get the control back over these numbers. Now, do they want to acknowledge this? Again, back to my old speech I give all the time. Do they care? Do they want to acknowledge any of this stuff? Do they, do what they're supposed to? No, but it's about you staying in honor because, again, the Bible it gives you the blessing. The meek shall inherit the earth. You stayed in honor, you're going to inherit the earth. These wicked people, they have a lake of fire for them. There's nothing to do, that has nothing to do with you and how you live on this planet. Uh-oh. Can you still hear me? Okay. I
Yes, I
thought
can
my
hear you.
thing
Sorry.
cut off. Okay. All right. So let me see how much this I'm gonna read. I'm just gonna read this top part of it because it's like 3 pages. And again, it's very similar to the estate uh, uh, one of the state agreements. So you see the document, you'll recognize it. So it says, whereas both of the parties are under the same jurisdictional ownership, the lawful age owner, as a United States creditor devizee, per is American Admiralty birthing name of my name of the family last name. As this name was family given, it will be retained, not as a trade name, but as a family name, in order to afford the receiver his full inherent rights to any just inherit family estate. If they take away your name, if you give up your name, if you renounce your name, you also renounce your ability to inherit. This is why I don't understand sovereign citizens. Or even the Moors. This is what they tell you: give up your name and take this name. Get this inheritance. Well, what about the inheritance my bloodline left for me? Why would I give that up? But that's what happens when you give up your name. Like, give it up and say, I'm never gonna use that name again. I don't go by that name. I'm surrendering it because I'm sovereign to myself somehow. Um, then you surrender all the inheritance that comes along with that. So, anyway, whereas as certain disputes have arisen over United States constitutional rights and just financial transactions of the original issued trade name, my first, middle, last name, that created the pawns, fraudulent conveyances by the foreign state and church adversary corporations, of which the pawnees are presently in a state of post obit, as because at 21 or 25 at the latest, this is supposed to be over. They're not supposed to keep you past 21 or 25. Right now, they have every literal person who has been born in this country since the founding of the country, and they have them in a perpetual state. That's why when the Social Security database, they found somebody on their books who was born 300 years ago, before the country was even founded. That's why, because they say they own, because they issued these numbers on a perpetual cycle. That's why they felt like when the person died, they could take that number and issue it to an illegal, because they own the numbers through these different contracts. They have the legal footing to justify it. Is it correct legal footing? No, but when are these people ever worried about being correct? So, by the foreign state and church adversary corporations, of which the pawnees are presently in state of post obit, as determined by their time limits, but the continued usage of the trade name has continued to create new pawns and pawnees, causing unjust harm known as commercial insurance monetary whaling of assets, thereby harming the lawful United States owner. Therefore, as the owner and a United States creditor or devisee, this is where the secure creditor part comes in, I have checkmated the original trade name and adopted a new United States Admiralty trade name of my tribal name, which is a private issue tribal name. This is what I put on my document, because it is a private issue tribal name. As the owner, I have also established a new American private enterprise estate to operate as a manual barter trading enterprise using just currency of exchange, exempt from all foreign and public controls, as long as no harm is caused by it, because that's the rule in common law. It is now resolved between the parties, and the following actions are to be fulfilled and honored by all U.S. bankruptcy, treasury, trustees, and agents involved, as it is desired to amicably resolve all disputes and acknowledge the extinguishment of any and all fraudulent conveyances, also known as pawns, debts, obligations, liabilities of any kind between the parties and all of their foreign adversaries per the United States Admiralty laws. It is here now agreed. There's a bunch of stuff in here, all your numbers, all this stuff. So, upon fulfillment of all considerations of this agreement and the Harriot services being properly, Harriot is like what you inherited, okay? Being properly settled by the U.S. District Bankruptcy Court, with all the assets transferred to my tribal name private enterprise estate, the parties mutually release one another from all claims of any kind whatsoever from the beginning of time to the date of the execution of this agreement, and that this mutual release shall be valid and binding and ensure the benefit of the heirs, successors and assigns of both parties. Any continued use of the bastardy trade name, my first, middle, last name, by the foreign maritime commercial public bankrupts or state bar agents to cause harm against the lawful admiralty owner will incur an infringement lien charge of $100,000 against them by this United States Admiralty owner, creditor, devotee in the U.S. District Bankruptcy Courts using the B-10 form. So the important thing about this in general is if you have a problem and these people won't like just leave you alone, you have this document that says if they use your name, they owe you $100,000, and you take it straight to bankruptcy court. You're not even fighting them about whatever it is they're talking about in whatever court they're talking about. Now you go to bankruptcy court, and I can tell you one thing: bankruptcy court is way different from these other courts out here. It's bankruptcy court is the admiralty court, honestly, and that's why all the stuff has to be done through bankruptcy court. So this is like just another layer of, okay, again, we don't try to cause no problems, but if these people want to keep going, we go on with them all the way to the end. And this not even in, because then we can go to the ecclesiastical court. That's what we're going to talk about next week. But we can go, we can take this as far as we have to, which I always try not to. As the newly adopted Admiralty trade name, my tribal name is for the private enterprise estate, a manual barter trading enterprise. Any infringement of its use or any infringement of it or its usage by the foreign state or public bankrupt maritime corporations or state bar agents will incur a trade name infringement lien charge of $250,000 against them by this United States Admiralty creditor devotee and the U.S. District Bankruptcy Court using the B-10 form. So if they try to put your tribal name, your private tribal name on a document and send it to you, you're taking them to bankruptcy court with this form and saying $250,000, and they're not going to be able to get out of it. Especially when you already have this stuff done and it's just sitting, there's nothing they can do. Besides, this is not the last step for this, because we take these admiralty documents and we put them all to, I mean, not just these documents, but I have a document that I've been telling y'all about called the what is that thing called? Oh, the trust indenture, the C'esti Que Trust Indenture. This part, like we don't cut no corners. We when we tell them out there we own ourselves and you should just stay away from us because we're not trying to cause no trouble, but we got 100 ways to cause trouble that will just be annoying because it's not their money, so they don't care about it. But it is annoying. It is very annoying to deal with because you know how difficult it is to understand admiralty law, much less whaling. It is not easy. They have to bring in a specialized expert just to explain it to them. And you can't find this on ChatGPT. It's not going to explain whaling to you. It's not, because all the whaling laws are from like the 1830s. It's not going to explain it to you. You have to bring in an old friggity white man that's going to cost you $10,000 an hour probably to explain to you how this works. This is very expensive for them. They don't want to be bothered with this stuff. They don't want to be bothered with this stuff. It's just too expensive. So, that's also this form. And so my form like this has been sitting for a year. And like I said, it's 11 forms with this. One of the forms, let me look at this real quick. It can't be done until after you have a baptism certificate. But again, like I said, the tribe can do that. It's not really, it's called the My American Admiralty Alien Living Vessel Christening Certificate. And you need the baptismal certificate for that, but you guys are a long way off of that, so this is not in the immediate future. But I will put a link to the Admiralty discussion from Patrick Devine in the group so you guys can take a listen to it, because I just went over the real outside big picture of how the Admiralty works. But this is a vastly deep subject of literature that most people they wouldn't even recognize the terms if they heard it. So knowing this stuff puts you in the top like 0.1% of people on this planet, basically. Because nobody knows this stuff. There's no people aren't talking about this casually, and even people who follow Patrick Devine, they did this stuff. They don't know what it means. They don't know how to use it. Um they don't have an understanding of how it goes into a bigger picture, and that's what he was doing. I could see, from this position. Oh, he was putting together this big picture of all these different sides of people that they just separated out, but people were just so focused on, I need some money in my pockets now. I have this problem I have to solve now. They never got to really see the whole picture. And because some people got some things to work, as opposed to trying to figure out how to create a planet where you birth a child and they're not put into this system. Um, because if I just say because he didn't have a womb, it didn't seem important to him to figure out how to protect what comes from the womb. Not that he was against it or anything. I don't think that, but as a person with a womb, I deeply want to figure out how to not put my children into this same boat. So I have one, my oldest daughter is getting ready to turn 18. We're getting ready to start on some of this paperwork. I know most of it is like 21 stuff, but one of the things that I'm looking at is having her change her name, her legal name, as soon as she turns 18, and then doing a bunch of other stuff like just having it be automatic that you separate yourself from your birth name as soon as you turn 18. So that is, your birth name is not important, but you want to create some space from that entity as soon as you can, if you can, if it's, you want to create some space. So anyway, that's just one of the things that I'm thinking about. I haven't really come up with a foolproof plan yet, but I got big ones, I got little ones. And all this stuff is a concern for me because nobody should be treating children like whales that they can just assign these numbers to, and I mean harvest them to death before they even become of age. That seems gross to me. So, anybody have any questions? I can, not necessarily about this, but just questions in general, because this is like a lot, and I